40 days of bombs, missiles and threats. And yesterday, a ceasefire was announced. Trump posted on Truth Social. He said, and I am quoting directly, "We have already met and exceeded all military objectives." Iran's National Security Council also posted. They said, "Good news to the dear nation of Iran. Nearly all our war objectives have been achieved." Both sides claiming victory on the same day. Only one of them is telling the truth. And in this video, we are going to show you which one, using nothing but logic and facts. But before we do that, we need to tell you something that every mainstream channel is completely ignoring right now. While the ceasefire was being announced, while people were celebrating in the streets of Tehran, Israel officially declared it is permanently occupying Lebanon. Not temporarily, not a buffer zone, permanently. And the ceasefire, according to Netanyahu himself, does not include Lebanon. So the war ended. But the land theft did not. Stay with us. Because this story goes much deeper than any headline you have seen today. Here is what we are going to break down in this video. 1. Why this ceasefire is actually Iran's victory, not America's. 2. The truth about the Strait of Hormuz that nobody in mainstream media will explain properly. 3. What Israel is doing in Lebanon right now, while every camera points somewhere else. 4. Why Netanyahu personally needs this war to continue, because without it, he goes to prison. And 5. The most important question of all. Israel bombs mediators everywhere in the Middle East, journalists, UN peacekeepers, hospital workers. But Pakistan's Prime Minister just brokered the entire ceasefire from Islamabad, completely untouched. Why? We will give you the answer that changes how you see everything happening in this region. Let's go. Part 1. The ceasefire, and who actually won. Let us start with what just happened. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Failure. They bombed Iran's nuclear sites, military commanders, government infrastructure. And on day 1, Israel assassinated Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Trump said this war would be over in weeks. He said Iran would surrender. He said America would dictate the terms. Now, let us look at the actual ceasefire terms. Iran submitted a 10-point proposal. Trump called it workable. Here is what is in Iran's 10 points. Point 1. America must permanently guarantee it will never attack Iran again. Point 2. Iran keeps full control of the Strait of Hormuz. Point 3. Iran keeps its right to enrich uranium for its nuclear program. Point 4. The war against all of Iran's allies ends, including in Lebanon. Point 5. All American sanctions on Iran are removed. Point 6. All United Nations Security Council resolutions against Iran are cancelled. Point 7. All International Atomic Energy Agency resolutions on Iran's nuclear program are dropped. Point 8. All frozen Iranian assets are returned. Point 9. Iran receives full compensation for war damage. Point 10. All United States combat forces withdraw from military bases across the Middle East. That is not a surrender. That is a winner's list. And Trump, the man who 2 hours earlier threatened that a whole civilization will die tonight, called it workable. From a civilization will die tonight to workable in 118 minutes. Now, let us compare that to what America originally demanded. America's 15-point plan, delivered through Pakistan, included this. Iran must dismantle its nuclear facilities at Natanz, Fordow and Isfahan. Iran must accept limits on its missiles. Iran must immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz. All of that in exchange for a 30-day pause in bombing. Iran looked at that plan and called it, and we are quoting, extremely maximalist and unreasonable. They were right, and the world agreed. So, who won? Iran rejected America's terms completely. Iran submitted its own terms. America called those terms workable. The talks are now happening in Islamabad on Friday, April 10th, based on Iran's 10-point framework. Iran's Supreme National Security Council said, "Our hands remain on the trigger." That is not the language of a country that lost. Part 2. The Strait of Hormuz. The lie that no one explains. Now here is the part where mainstream media completely fails us. Trump's biggest demand throughout this entire war was reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He threatened to bomb Iran's bridges. He threatened to destroy Iran's power plants. He threatened to wipe out Iranian civilization if Iran did not reopen the strait. Here is the question we need to ask. Who closed the Strait of Hormuz? Before February 28, 2026, the Strait of Hormuz was completely open. 135 ships passed through it every single day. 20% of the world's oil. Moving freely, normal business. Then the United States and Israel launched the war on February 28th. They bombed Iran, killed Iran's supreme leader, destroyed nuclear sites, and Iran's response the very next day was to close the strait. The strait was open. America started the war. Iran closed the strait as retaliation. Then Trump spent 40 days demanding Iran reopen the strait that was open before he started bombing. Let us give you the simplest possible analogy. You punch your neighbor in the face. He locks his front gate so your friends cannot use his driveway. You then go on television and say, "This man is holding the neighborhood hostage with his locked gate," and you demand he unlock it as a condition for you to stop punching him. That is exactly what happened with the Strait of Hormuz, and the global media called it Iran's aggression. But here is what they also did not tell us. Iran's closure was not random. Iran allowed ships from Pakistan, India, China, Russia, Turkey and Iraq to pass safely. They were blocking vessels from the United States, Israel and their direct allies only. This was not an act of desperation. This was a precise, intelligent economic weapon. Iran was telling the world, "You allowed America to bomb us. You will feel the economic consequences." And the world felt it immediately. Iraq, the world's sixth largest oil producer, cut production by 70%. Qatar Energy invoked force majeure. Shell followed. Kuwait Petroleum followed. Oil prices hit $126 a barrel, the biggest energy disruption since the 1970s oil crisis. American gas prices at the pump spiked more than 30% in a single month. Trump said, and we are quoting, "We haven't needed it and we don't need it." His own voters were paying $4 a gallon, and the president said, "America doesn't need the strait." That is not a policy. That is a man who did not think through the consequences of someone else's war. Part 3. The deal that was murdered before the war even started. Now we need to show you something that will change how you understand this entire conflict. The mainstream narrative is, America went to war because Iran was building nuclear weapons and being aggressive. Here are the actual facts. On February 25, 2026, 3 days before the war, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi made a public statement. He said a historic agreement with the United States was within reach. He said diplomacy must be prioritized. He said Iran does not want nuclear weapons. The next day, February 26th, A third round of indirect peace talks happened in Geneva, mediated by Oman. Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi went on record. He said a breakthrough had been reached. He said Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium. He said Iran had agreed to full verification by the International Atomic Energy Agency. He said peace was, his words, within reach. Talks were scheduled to resume on March 2nd. The next morning, February 28th, America and Israel bombed Iran. The United Nations Secretary-General said, and we are quoting, "The attacks occurred following the third round of indirect talks, squandering an opportunity for diplomacy." Oman's foreign minister, the actual mediator, said he was dismayed. He said active and serious negotiations have yet again been undermined. He said, "This is not your war." We want you to read those words carefully, yet again, not for the first time, not a surprise, again. Because here is the pattern we need to understand. A deal gets close. The deal gets killed. The war starts. This happened not once, not twice. This is the established pattern of this conflict. And now we need to ask the question that changes everything. On February 10th, 18 days before the war started, Netanyahu, described by his own allies as increasingly alarmed that negotiations would succeed, met with Trump to push for military action. Alarmed that peace would succeed. We believe that single sentence should be the headline of every newspaper on earth. Part 6. The man who needs war to stay free. Now, let us talk about the person at the center of all of this, Benjamin Netanyahu. He has been on trial since 2020 for bribery, fraud and breach of trust. 3 separate cases. If convicted on even one charge, he will be barred from public office. He faces up to 10 years in prison. He has not admitted guilt. He has requested a pardon from Israel's president. Trump himself wrote a personal letter to Israel's president requesting Netanyahu be pardoned. During his first press conference since the war started, 12 days into the conflict, Netanyahu called his own corruption trial an absurd circus. He called it that. During a war. His first press conference in 12 days, and he spent it demanding a pardon. An American senator described this conflict as an incoherent war launched at the incessant urging of Netanyahu. He said a major two-front war postpones Netanyahu's corruption trial, keeps him out of jail, and enhances his political standing ahead of elections due by October 2026. Let us be completely clear about this equation. War equals no trial dates. War equals election boost. War equals land acquisition in Lebanon. War equals distraction from Gaza accountability. War equals the ICC arrest warrant becomes politically irrelevant. Netanyahu cannot even travel to most countries in the world without risking arrest. He skipped the World Economic Forum in Davos because Switzerland would have been legally required to detain him under the International Criminal Court warrant. This man, who cannot move freely around the world, convinced the most powerful military on earth to fight his war. And America paid for it, with aircraft, with money, with alliances, with credibility. One F-35 damaged by Iranian fire, the first time in history. 4 F-15. Strike Eagles lost, 1 a 10. Thunderbolt shot down, 1 E-3 Sentry surveillance aircraft destroyed, 17 Reaper drones destroyed, multiple refueling tankers damaged. Italy refused American warplanes permission to land in Sicily. Spain blocked American planes from its airspace. France blocked planes heading to Israel. These are NATO allies, America's own partners, saying no. NATO is fracturing. The dollar weakened. Global energy markets disrupted for 40 days. And the final deal is Iran's deal, on Iran's terms, brokered by Pakistan, not America. Part 7. The final count. Let us be honest about what 40 days actually produced. America wanted to eliminate Iran's nuclear program, still intact. America wanted to control the Strait of Hormuz. Iran now coordinates who passes through. America wanted to demonstrate regional dominance. NATO allies publicly refused to cooperate. Iran declared nearly all war objectives achieved. America declared victory too. Only one of them is standing on facts. Now let us be honest about this ceasefire. 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. And on April 10th, delegations from America and Iran meet in Islamabad, under Pakistani mediation. That is where the real story continues, because everything that matters is still unresolved. Iran's nuclear program, still on the table. US forces in the Middle East, still there. Lebanon, still under military operations. Sanctions, still being negotiated. Iranian compensation demands, still open. The Islamabad talks will tell us everything. Will America accept Iran's 10 points fully? Will Iran get its nuclear enrichment right recognized permanently? Will US forces actually withdraw from the region? Or will the talks collapse and the military operations resume in 2 weeks? We are watching closely, and we will report everything. But while the world waits for Islamabad, on the very day the ceasefire was announced, Israel launched what it called Operation Eternal Darkness. Over 100 strikes across Lebanon within 10 minutes. No warnings issued to civilians, residential neighborhoods, busy commercial streets, rush-hour traffic. A cemetery in the Bekaa Valley struck during a funeral service. 3 young girls lost their lives in the coastal town of Adlaun. 254 civilians confirmed as casualties. 1,165 others injured. All on the same day, Trump posted about a golden age of the Middle East. Pakistan's Prime Minister said the ceasefire covers everywhere, including Lebanon. Netanyahu said it does not, and Beirut continued to suffer. Now, let us say the one thing no mainstream channel will say directly. Benjamin Netanyahu does not want this conflict to end. He never did. Without this conflict, he faces serious legal proceedings. Without this conflict, he faces potential removal from office. Without this conflict, he loses the upcoming election. Without this conflict, the world focuses on the territorial seizure happening in Lebanon right now. This conflict is not his foreign policy. This conflict is his legal protection strategy. The seizure of southern Lebanon is not about security. It is about territory. The military operations in Beirut are not about any armed group. They are about distraction. 254 Lebanese civilians paid the price for one man's legal situation today. Remember that the next time you see a headline about Israel defending itself, ask who is actually being defended, the nation or the individual facing criminal proceedings. That is the story behind the story. The mainstream media will call this a diplomatic breakthrough. They will not tell us about the Oman negotiations that were progressing the day before the military operation started. They will not explain who actually closed the Strait of Hormuz and why. They will not show us 254 civilian casualties in Beirut while the world celebrates a ceasefire. They will not connect Netanyahu's legal proceedings to the continuation of this conflict. Watch what happens in Islamabad on April 10th. We will be here to break it down for you. Share this video right now, not tomorrow. Right now. Because platforms suppress this kind of analysis. Your share is the only way this reaches the people who need to see it. 254 civilians lost their lives in Lebanon today. The least we can do is make sure the world knows. We do this together. The story behind the story. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.